Do you have trust issues with God? Then this video is for you, and I'm glad that it made its way to you today because I truly believe this will change the way you see your relationship with God forever. So welcome in, glad you're here. This is the Stephen Lovegrove Show. Take a second if you're watching on YouTube to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. I guarantee if you watch this video today, we are about to elevate you in consciousness. And so you can decide to make the powerful choice to tell the algorithm, I want more of this content and this energy in my life, in my feed. Meanwhile, welcome to those of you who are watching live as I stream this on any other platform or later on. Please say hi and let me know that you are watching. I never take it for granted that you're here, that this matters to you, and that you are taking time out of your day to hang out with me. If you're new to me, my name is Stephen. I am America's life coach. My core message is very simply that all things are possible for the one who believes. And I am here to help you be the one who believes. So pleasure to meet you. If we're meeting for the very first time, welcome back to all of you who are just about family at this point to me. And I want to dive into this message. So let me know live if you're ready to go here as we talk for a few moments today about trust issues with God. I know that might be an unusual title or topic or conversation to have, but that's what was on my heart, that I felt really strongly led to talk about today. Trust issues with God. And so in this video, we're specifically going to talk about avoidant attachment and anxious attachment when it comes to God. I will get into all of that in a moment. We're also going to be talking about the story you live in about yourself and the way it shapes your life, the way it shapes your business, the way it shapes your results. So we will get into all of that in just a moment, but let me begin the conversation here. If you are familiar with the concept of attachment in the psychology world, right? That there is something we call attachment theory, and I'm not gonna claim to be an expert on this or try to be a psychiatrist today, but just to give you a quick, summary of the concept for our purposes here. Attachment theory says, when we are very, very little, and often the really key years are like our earliest ones, 0 to 3, 0 to 7, etc., somewhere in that range, depending on who you ask, right? Attachment theory says, ideally, a child at that age, we want to form a secure bond with the parents, with the caretakers, with the caregivers. What does that mean? Well, if the child has a secure bond, we want them to feel safe. We want them to be able to communicate. We want them to feel that no matter what, they will be taken care of, right? That's the goal. That's the ideal. And yet, for so many of us as kids, we don't end up forming a secure bond. So when we don't feel safe and secure in those early years with whoever is our caretaker, we end up with a less than ideal experience of attachment, right? Instead of the secure attachment bond, we end up with something else, a dysfunctional form of attachment. And I hope this isn't getting too heady or intellectual or technical for you today, because I promise this is so practical and so powerful if you'll stick with me here. But I was thinking about this because the two biggest attachment styles that people talk about are anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. And I want us to just talk about these in broad terms with relationships as attachment styles. We'll get to God in a moment. And there's a powerful connection here. And I think once you see this, you will never see it the same way again. But just to set this up, the two biggest attachment styles that people talk about are anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, right? Now, anxious attachment says, I'm scared that you're gonna leave me. I don't trust this. I feel anxious, right? And so anxious attachment says, I need to be clingy, and I'm operating from a place of fear, and I'm gonna be scared, and I'm gonna be anxious, and I'm going to need continual reassurance, and I'm going to need continual validation over and over and over, because even if you said it 5 minutes ago, I'm worried about it again now. And listen, I'm not judging any of this. In various ways in my life and with my childhood, with my relationships, with my dating, I have been anxious attached. I have been avoidant attached. So no shame, no judgment on any of this, but I want you to understand the concept. The anxious attached person says, I don't trust that you're really gonna be there. I don't trust that you're really gonna show up for me and take care of me. I don't trust that you're gonna stick around, that you're not gonna leave, that you mean what you say. And so anxious attachment says, I've gotta cling on, and I've gotta live in a continual state of anxiety, and I've got to try to control everything to feel safe. That is anxious attachment, right? Then there's avoidant attachment. And avoidant attachment says, you weren't there for me. You didn't show up for me. You let me down. I got hurt in the past. I got burned in the past. And I know better now. I have defense mechanisms up now, and I will never let that happen again. And the avoidant person says, I'm not gonna cling on. I'm not gonna be overly attached. I'm not gonna be needy. The avoidant person says, I'm going to protect myself by doing the exact opposite. So I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to hide. I'm going to be hard to find, hard to connect to, hard to bond with. The avoidant person says, I'm going to withdraw to keep myself safe. This is how I protect myself. This is how I know that I'm never, ever, ever gonna be hurt ever again. And so anxious attachment says, I'm gonna cling on, and I'm gonna need all of this validation from you, and I'm going to try to control everything. And avoidant attachment says, I'm gonna withdraw, I'm gonna keep my guard up, I'm gonna hide and be distant and avoid. And here's the thing, whether we're talking about anxious attachment or avoidant attachment, what they both have in common is they only exist when we don't feel safe. They only exist when we are not secure in a relationship, in a connection, in the love that we have somewhere. They only exist when we don't trust that at the end of the day, we really are going to be loved. Now, maybe you're already very familiar with attachment theory. If you're watching this, maybe this is new to you and you're learning this and having light bulb moments and realizing some things for the first time, and it's okay either way, but I want to move the conversation a little bit deeper to a different direction now, because what I just talked through is just attachment theory broadly, right? If you were to study, if you were to read about, if you were to look up online, what is attachment theory? Again, I don't claim to be the supreme expert on it, so there are no doubt many voices out there that you can learn from specifically about it if you want to go deeper, that know a lot more than me. But what I just described is attachment theory broadly. Where I want to take us now, that really is the core of this video, is I will never forget the day that I started observing my own inner world when it came to trust. And by the way, there are so many insights to be gained if you will just observe your inner world. Not everything that's constantly scrolling by on every feed, every screen, every app ever. Not what everybody else is saying, not what everybody else is doing. Not constant distraction, not constant entertainment, as much as I love good entertainment. If you will just listen, to just observe, to just pay attention to your inner world, there are so many insights waiting to be gained, right? They're there, they're waiting for you, they're ready for you now. If you will just observe your inner world. I remember recently I heard Kyle Cease say, only the ego could convince us that the scariest thing we could possibly do would be to sit with ourselves for an hour. Ego would rather do anything else than that. And so ego will tell you that's not productive. Ego will tell you that's a waste of time. Ego will tell you that's boring, that's miserable, that's stupid. But wow, when you realize there's a part of me that doesn't want to look at this, because there must be a part of me that's scared of what I'm going to find, because there must be a part of me that is not at peace with myself. And I just want to say, if that is you today, I want you to know I have so much love and compassion for you. And there is no judgment ever in this space, on this channel, in my videos. But may I offer to you today that if you are not comfortable and safe and at home being with yourself, that may be your most significant opportunity for growth this year. Because just think about this for a moment, right? It's difficult to show up in the world in a big way with a personal brand when you don't feel comfortable with yourself. It's difficult to date and to get to know another human being and to open your heart to love when you don't feel comfortable with yourself. It's difficult to sell and to put your stuff out there and to let yourself receive in a major way when you don't feel comfortable with yourself, right? And again, I'm saying this with zero shame or judgment in any of it, but I want us to think about the principle here. It's difficult to invite somebody else to come into your world and to connect to it and to stay there for a while if you don't even like being in your world. Do you feel that? And so there's something to be said for what insights, what breakthroughs, what profound, life-changing aha moments are often waiting for us when we choose to just sit with ourselves. And by the way, I also want to say, while I'm on this topic, I intentionally design my content, even videos just like this one. I intentionally design them to be an opportunity for you to get still and to ground into the moment and to be with yourself, to be with your inner world, to be with your vision for a few moments as you watch. And I honestly believe with a lot of my coaching, with a lot of my programs, with a lot of my content, half the gift that people give themselves in the showing up is showing up to just tune out distraction, tune out the noise for a bit, tune out all of the fear-based stuff that you may not have even realized is coming from fear, and just to reconnect to yourself and to be with yourself for a prolonged period of time. That is certainly an intention I have in making content for you. And I believe there is power in being with yourself. And when you start to observe your inner world, one of the things I want you to look for is, what do my reactions tell me about what I believe? What do my reactions tell me about what I believe? And I remember one day I was observing my inner world, specifically when it came to trust. And I started to realize, interesting, I'm having a very hard time trusting right now. Interesting. I find myself needing continual reassurance in my inner world right now. I remember observing, this is interesting, I find myself returning to a tool, returning to a practice, returning to a belief or an affirmation or a ritual, seeking some sort of reassurance, seeking some sort of validation, which I know better than. I know that's not the way to use inner work, but I'm struggling to trust. And I will never forget the day that it suddenly occurred to me and I could just see it for the first time and I could just see it as clear as day. And let me know in the comments if you have had one of those moments ever in your life, or maybe even recently, where suddenly you could see something that you could not see before up until that point. But in an instant, that changed. And you suddenly saw something new and a breakthrough occurred. Maybe you saw the root cause of the problem for the first time and a breakthrough occurred. Maybe you saw the underlying thought or belief or energy that had been beneath the pattern all along and a breakthrough occurred. Maybe you suddenly saw a possibility or a pathway that had even been available to you the whole time, but you couldn't see it until then, and you suddenly saw it, and in that moment, something shifted and a breakthrough occurred, right? And I just remember this very specific moment where I suddenly had my own personal breakthrough moment, and I realized, I think I'm anxious attached to God. I think I have anxious attachments to God. It was the most massive breakthrough moment for me. I talked about it extensively in a program that I did this year, From Over Leverage to Overflowing. I will link that here for you if you want to check out that full teaching and program for yourself. But it was this light bulb moment because I suddenly looked at my relationship with God and my dynamic with God, and I suddenly realized this is anxious attachment. If I was looking at this from a personal development lens, if I was looking at this from a clinical lens, if I was looking at this from a therapeutic lens, this is nothing more and nothing less than anxious attachment. And I suddenly realized I have anxious attachment with God. And then I started to realize that made sense. And I want to talk for a few moments about why that made sense for me. Because I believe that there are people watching this and you have trust issues with God. And I promise you, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to live there. You don't have to feel like that forever. But I also believe you've got to see why it is the way it is right now before it can be changed. There's a power in understanding why has it been this way, right? I've used this metaphor before. If you have a spare room or an attic or a closet, and it has all of these old boxes of junk that need to be, cleared or removed or thrown away, whatever the case may be, right? Work with me on this analogy for a second. It's not going to automatically clear the room for you to walk in and turn on the light, right? Turning on the light is not automatically going to clean the room. Turning on the light is not automatically going to make the boxes disappear. Turning on the light is not automatically going to do the job for you. But think with me, how difficult would it be to try to clear the clutter in a room without the light? Imagine walking into a pitch black room and you know that you have been given this task. You've got to clean up the room. You've got to clear the clutter. You've got to get these boxes out. Imagine walking into a room like that with that assignment, but the room is pitch black and you have no sources of light. It's going to be difficult. It might even be dangerous. You might even trip and injure yourself, hurt yourself on some of these boxes, right? And so no, turning on the light is not going to shift everything immediately. But I would dare to say it might be 80% of it, because it's suddenly going to get way easier to do the job when you can see. And I use that analogy because that is how I view the power of awareness. It really is, in my estimation, at least 80% of the battle. No, it's not like as soon as I have the awareness, there's nothing else to do, nothing else to shift, nothing else to heal, it's all done. But it is a massive part of the equation to have that initial awareness, and it all becomes possible and it all becomes easier to shift when you have the awareness. So don't be afraid, by the way, to turn on the lights. And that applies to this video, that applies to anything you watch from me or anybody else. Don't be afraid to turn on the lights, even if you're scared that you're not going to like what you see. Because those boxes were there anyway. And if those boxes were old or crusty or moldy, they were stinking up the attic anyway. And those boxes have got to go anyway. So there's nothing you risk by turning on the light. Nothing bad is going to happen by turning on the light. And once you let yourself have the awareness, it may not feel good or fun or comfortable right off the bat to have the awareness, but it opens up the possibility that you now get to choose something new. And you really do. And that is a message for every single person watching this. You get to choose something new. It does not matter how long it has been this way. It does not matter how much evidence you have that's piled up. It doesn't matter how stuck you have felt. Please hear this message today. You get to choose something new, something else, something different, starting right now. So I had this big realization that, wait a minute, I think I have anxious attachment with God. And I have this realization, and I suddenly realize I've never seen this before. And that maybe sounds silly to say, but it also makes complete sense. Because I didn't ever get the chance to form a secure bond with God growing up. For those of you who don't know much about me or my story, I grew up in a fundamentalist religious cult. It was a very strict world. Think, a little bit like the town of Footloose. No dancing, no modern music, no movie theaters, etc., etc., etc. And very strict world, very, very religious, and very controlled, and very culty, and very fear-based. And my understanding of God, my beliefs about God, my paradigms about God came to me first from that world. So I am told that God is an angry, angry God. I am told that God tortures many, many, many people alive forever. I am told that God looks at certain people, in fact, people like me, as an abomination. This is not obviously what I believe now, but this is what I was told at that time. I was told that God was going to leave people behind and destroy the earth and wreak havoc. I was told that God was ready to punish people at a moment's notice. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time or energy here, but I was given beliefs about God that did not make me connect and draw close. I was given beliefs about God that felt scary, that felt heavy, that felt painful and intense and difficult. And so I didn't form a secure bond with God as a kid. Instead, I ended up with anxious attachment. So I was always afraid, did God really love me? I was always afraid, had I prayed correctly? I was always afraid, had I done enough to be saved? Was God going to turn on me? Was God going to abandon me? Was God going to leave me behind? Was God going to punish me? Did God think of me as an abomination? Was God placing a curse upon me? Was God just sending all sorts of turmoil my way? I mean, this sounds dark, but I wanted to articulate it because these were the kinds of thoughts and feelings that played on repeat for me. And so I ended up with an anxious attachment with God. Now, here's why this matters, and specifically why this matters to you. And I really want to move into, very specifically, a life and business and spirituality conversation right in this moment, particularly for every leader who is watching me right now. Here's the problem about having trust issues with God. God is the source of all that there is. God is the source of all that there is. And if you're watching this video, you probably already know that. If you're watching this video, that's probably not a new concept to you. If you're watching this video, it's probably already in your belief system that God is the infinite source and supply of all that there is. But here's what that means. Anything that you're creating, anything that you desire, anything that you want to see in your life will come through that source. If there's one source and supply of all that there is, and we know this to be metaphysical truth, and you hold that belief, as I know many of you do, what does it say then? If everything you ever create, if everything you ever receive, if everything that you desire has to come through that source, and what does it say if you have trust issues around that source, when it's that source you also want to receive from? Do you see the conflict here? I'm gonna get a sip of water, but let me know, do you see the conflict here in having trust issues with the source? Because how can I trust my future if I don't trust the source? How can I trust good things are on the way if I don't trust the source? How can I trust what I'm receiving if I don't trust the source? And so this is where it gets real. This is where it hits the fan. This is where the trust issues really matter on so many levels. Because everything you're ever going to receive comes from that same source. And if you have a disconnection of trust there, it's going to be difficult to receive. It's going to feel risky to receive. It's going to feel far away or out of reach or maybe even impossible to receive. Okay, I really am going to get a sip of water. Hang with me here. Thank you for being here. And so I want to talk to the people today who are realizing I have attachment issues with God. I have attachment issues with God. And the really good news that I want to share with you today is, the good news is, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the universe. There's nothing wrong with the source or supply. Can you hear that good news today? There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with the universe. There is nothing wrong with the source and supply. There is no principle that says you asked for too much. There is no principle that says you don't get to have what you want. There is no principle that is keeping what you want from you. And you might say, well, Stefan, if that's all true, why don't I have it yet? And where is this thing? And why is it not working? And why do I feel stuck? And why is this piece taking so long? And I want to suggest to you, it may simply be because there is an energetic dynamic that is playing out. And right now, you are stuck in that frequency. And you are stuck creating from that frequency. And you are stuck having experiences that match that frequency. And so I want to talk about attachment issues with God. Attachment issues with God, right? Because I told you earlier, there are two dominant styles of dysfunctional, less than ideal, wound-based forms of attachment, right? We have anxious and we have avoidant. Anxious and avoidant, right? And I want to talk about this distinction specifically because the anxious attached person doesn't trust, so they try to control. And the avoidant person doesn't trust, so they try to hide. And I wanted to speak very directly today, and if this is, if it feels like I've been reading your email, if it feels a little too close to home, if it feels like this is right where you live, please hear the deep, unconditional love and infinite possibility that is within this message. Because this may be uncomfortable, this may be a stretch, this may be, a little bit crunchy to sit with. But I promise you, if it's speaking to you, there is something for you here. And I wanted to speak very directly to the people who have been in either or of these dynamics. To the anxious attachment people that always need the reassurance that they're good enough, that they're worthy, that they did it right, that always need to check it again, that always need the validation again. The anxious attachment people that worry that they will always be rejected or judged or abandoned in the end. The anxious attached people who, more than anything else, always try to control because they don't trust what happens if they're not in control. I felt energetically, somebody watching this at a later point just breathed a massive sigh of relief when you heard me say that. And it was like a light bulb went on and something just clicked for you. Wait a minute. The reason I try to control everything is not just because I'm type A, this, that, the other. It's because I don't trust what would happen if I didn't control. I don't trust what would happen if I let go for even 1 second. And so I wanted to speak very directly to the people who feel anxious attachment with God. I also wanted to speak very directly to the people who have avoidant attachment. This is where there's stuff going on inside of you and you just choose not to look at it. It feels easier, it feels safer, it feels better in the moment to just not look at it. These are the people that there may be whole categories of things in your life. I don't check that, I don't open that, I can't face that right now. These are the people who have walls up and you know it. These are the people that you are guarded times 100 guards, 100 layers of security, 100 gates. And I think about the quote from my very, very first coach ever in my life. He said at a certain point in life, you wake up and realize that all all your defenses have kept you safe from is love. You realize that your defenses have not actually kept out the fear, kept out the threats, kept out the bad. At a certain point in life, you wake up and you realize all my defenses have done is to keep me from love. Isn't that a funny phrase? They've kept me safe from love. They've warded off the dangers of love. They've protected me from love. Because I didn't trust that. So I stay withdrawn, and I stay in hiding, and I stay playing small. And this is the safe zone, and this is where I know I'm not going to get hurt. You know, I will just say, in the realm of personal development and spirituality, and particularly as I see people interact with my content here, the anxious attached people are often addicted to, let me find one more thing, one more thing, one more thing, one more tool, one more resource, one more teacher, one more practice. They're often addicted to, I need the reassurance once again, I need to try something new, I need the validation once again, and 5 minutes ago wasn't good enough because I still don't trust that I am enough. Oh my God, I felt that sentence. 5 minutes ago wasn't enough because I still don't trust that I am enough. And so the anxious, attached people think if I can control everything, I will be safe and I will be loved and I will receive. And we are shattering that illusion today because as uncomfortable as this may feel, I promise you, it is not getting you what you want. Do you feel that? If you have been living in an anxious, attached pattern with yourself, with life, with God, it's not getting you what you want. I know it has sold you on. This is going to keep you safe. And this is going to allow you to receive. And this is going to get you love. And at a certain point, you have to wake up and realize my controlling doesn't get me love. My controlling doesn't get me the receiving. My controlling isn't the best way to get what I want. And the avoidant people have to realize I'm hiding from what I want. I'm not keeping myself safe from anything but love, from anything but the good, from anything but my destiny. I'm hiding from what I want because I don't trust that I'm safe. I don't trust that you're not going to hurt me. And so I wanted to speak today to the people who are trying to control everything, but it's not getting you what you want. I wanted to speak today to the people who are trying to guard yourself and withdraw and hide, and it's still not getting you what you want. And I wanted to say to all of you who have any form of these attachment trust issues with God, we only end up in this place when we don't trust that good things are meant for us. We only end up in this place when we don't really trust at the core of our being that good things are meant for us. See, the anxious attached person doesn't trust that good things are naturally flowing to them, that they could be loved, that they could be wanted, that they could truly, actually already be worthy unconditionally, that they could actually receive without a whole lot of effort and get everything they want. That the anxious attached person doesn't trust that. So they try to control instead. The avoidant attachment person doesn't trust that it's not going to hurt them, that it's not going to be dangerous, that it's not going to add something bad to their life. And so the avoidant person says, there's nothing good over here. There's nothing here for me. There's nothing here that I want. And let me convince myself of that. And let me pretend that that's actually what I believe. And let me put up walls. And let me get really good at hiding behind a shield. I would rather shut it all out than take a risk because I don't trust what's on the other side. And the answer to all of this is the trust that comes from a secure bond. the trust that comes from a secure bond. See, to go back to the original concept here, when we believe that we are safe, and we know who we are, and we know that we're valuable, and we feel like we can speak up, we feel like we can communicate, and we believe we will be taken care of, we believe that there are good things here for us. When we operate from that place, there's a safety and a security and a peace that we get to rest in. And the moment that I realized, I think I've been playing out a pattern of anxious attachment with God, the moment that I realized that was the moment I realized I've got to do the work to learn how to live in a secure bond with unconditional love. Now, I always think about, Course in Miracles says, the way of love is not difficult, but it is different. It is not inherently difficult, but it is different. And I always like to quote that because whenever we talk about doing the work, I am aware there are people who feel like I don't even have space and time to think about doing inner work right now. I am aware that there are people who have a story of urgency that says, I've got to go do this first, or finish this first, or once this is taken care of, then I can think about that. I'm aware that there are people who get overwhelmed or resistant or turned off immediately to simply the idea that there's any more work to do. And I get that, and I have been there, felt that, right? But I remember when I saw this, I realized I deserve to have a secure bond with God. Forget the practicality of it, forget the pragmaticness of it, forget the logic of it. I just remember thinking and feeling and realizing, just on a human level, just for the sake of my day-to-day experience in life, I deserve to have a secure bond with God. And if there really is, as I know to be true, one source and supply of all that there is, I want to be able to be connected to that source. I want to be able to receive from that source. I want to be able to trust that source. I think about, this is the metaphysical truth behind the quote, that when you seek first the kingdom of God, all of these things are added to you, right? What is that text saying? What is the eternal metaphysical truth there? The truth is, if you are plugged into the source, you have everything. You have all the power you could ever need or want. You have access to all things if you are plugged into the source. And so I want to use this example here. You know, many of you know, as I said at the very beginning of this video, the core message at the heart of all the work, all the content, everything that I've done for a decade now has been, all things are possible for the one who believes. And those are actually words of Jesus, very famous words of Jesus, that stuck with me through many different seasons of life, even as my own beliefs were evolving and I was figuring out who I was and everything was in transition. Those words always stuck with me. And when I sat down at the beginning of my business journey and I had that white notebook open and I asked myself, what do I want my core message to the world to be? I wrote out, all things are possible for the one who believes. And that has been right there at the core ever since, right? But I say that because I'm about to use another Jesus quote here. And I want you to open up your heart to hear it. Whether or not the story, the energy, the message of Jesus has any personal resonance for you or not, that's okay. I have coached everybody from Muslims to atheists to Wiccans and everything in between. So I don't care what your spirituality or religion or lack thereof is. If this message resonates with you today, then receive it and know that it is for you today. But at the very, very beginning of Jesus living out his destiny on this planet, before there are any healings, before there are any teachings, before there are any miracles, there is a story that is told, that is recorded for us multiple places. There is something that happens that I think is so important, and I really felt led to talk about this today. And thank you for being with me today. Thank you for letting me go deep. Thank you for enjoying the spiritual meatiness of this content today. But before any miracles, before any healings, before any teachings, there is this moment where Jesus chooses to get baptized and go under the water as a ritual, a representation, a symbol of new life. And as he does, it says the heavens opened up. We could also say the universe opened up. And the voice of God in this story thunders out like Morgan Freeman. I envision it with a bassy voice. But the voice of God thunders out. And when you really look at what the voice of God says in the story, if you go back to the original languages, if you look at every single one of the words individually, you put it all together, the voice of God says something that could be literally translated to be, hear this today, this is my lovable, worthy, favorite child, in whom I am delighted. This is my lovable, worthy, favorite child, in whom I am delighted. And I'm not going to get into a ton of theology here, and I don't want to lose anybody or overwhelm anybody here, but just understand, from a theological perspective, from a spiritual perspective, from a metaphysical perspective, we are not meant to be looking at a story like that and saying, well, that's nice for Jesus, nice for him, nice for that story. I doubt that is what the universe would ever say about me, right? I'm not going to unpack all of this theologically and metaphysically and intellectually right here, but just trust me when I say, Jesus is demonstrating in a story like that the most alive, the most authentic, the most tapped in way to be human. That story is for you. That message is for you too. And the reason I was thinking about this story and I was brought back to it for this teaching today is, I think it's so significant that there was a divine seal of approval stamped at the deepest level of his heart before he ever taught anything, before he ever embodied anything, before he ever did a healing, before he ever did a miracle, before he ever did any of the wonderful, crazy, wild things that are written about, before any of that happened, before he was even known. I feel really led to just pause there and say, there are people who are waiting for the bigger audience. You're waiting to blow up more. You're waiting to be discovered. You're waiting to be seen at a greater level. You're waiting to be known. And by the way, you get to expand to whatever level you desire. And if you've been around here for any length of time, you know I am the last person to discourage people stepping into expansion and influence and visibility. You can have all of that. You might be meant to have all of that. But please don't wait on anything until you're more known, more seen, more discovered. Please don't wait on anything for that. And what I love about this story, this message, this quote is, it came before any of the good works. It came before any of the teaching. It came before the healings. It came before the miracles. And it came before he was even known. And before anything else was done, there was already a divine stamp of approval that said, this is my lovable child. This is my worthy child. This is my favorite child, in whom I find delight. You know, there was a moment in my life where this text just made me cry. So much. And I remember hearing Michael Beckwith quote this story, this text, these words, and realizing that it was, in fact, correct on all levels, to be claiming that as a spiritual truth of identity for myself. But I remember there was a moment where I just wept about this text because, you know, as many of you know, I was kicked out of the house and kicked out of a cult and kicked out of a family at the time in that way. And I remember the first time I read this for myself and my theology nerd kicked in and I'm looking up, what does it actually say? What does it say in the original language? What are the words here before other people put their projections on top of it? And I remember I'm going through it word by word by word by word, and I just read mine. A word that means mine. And I just remember it knocked me over emotionally in the best way to realize God looks at each and every one of us and says, they are mine. That is a perfect creation. I didn't mess anything up. There are no mistakes there. There are no accidents there. There are no coincidences there. That is a perfect creation of God. And he is mine, she is mine, they are mine. And I remember it moved me so deeply that when I had felt in the earliest stages of my life, and again, this is where all the attachment stuff came from, where I had felt so much rejection, so much abandonment, so much isolation, it started changing me from the inside out to realize that infinite love and infinite power and infinite intelligence created me as a perfect creation and was willing to say, Stephen is mine. I do claim him. I do. And I want you to hear this message today. Fill in your own name. This is my lovable, worthy, favorite child, in whom I find great delight. I remember hearing preachers joke about when I was little that, you know, God loves everybody, but does God like somebody, right? God, and I remember one time, I don't know where he got this idea, but I remember one time I heard a preacher say, God loves everybody, but he doesn't like everyone. And that hurt when I was a kid. Like maybe that was just a joke. I'm sure this preacher assumed, well, I'm one of the liked ones. God may not like everybody, but see, he put himself in that category, but I'm one of the good ones. But see, one of the things I'm so passionate about is being a voice of spirituality for the people that you grew up and you didn't feel safe. You grew up and you just felt afraid. You grew up and you felt rejected. You grew up and you felt excluded. You grew up and you felt like you didn't belong. You grew up and you did not see yourself as one of the good ones. You saw yourself, or maybe you were explicitly told that you were one of the bad ones, that you were rebellious, that you were a troublemaker, that you were causing problems, etc., that there was something wrong with who you are, that what you wanted was wrong. I am so passionate about being a voice of spirituality for the people that lost this connection because they didn't see themselves as one of the good ones. And I want you to hear that this message still comes to you today. It is still for you today. It is still spoken over you today. You are just as much God's child and a perfect creation of the divine as anybody else. You are just as much. And I love that if you look at the word beloved, as it's often translated in the old English version, right? If you look at the word beloved, there's a meaning in it of lovable. Because I know there's many of us that were told or made to feel like we were not so lovable. And I want you to hear that this is eternal truth. And this is the way that God sees you. And you can receive this in every cell of your being today. You are lovable. You are worthy of love, worthy of blessing, worthy of all good things. You are the favorite. Why? Because truly God has no favorites, and the presence of God is equally within everyone and everything. So within your reality, you are the favorite. And in you, God takes delight. See, I love the word delight because when I gotta restart the music. We've gone for an hour here already, I think, or almost an hour. This is a long teaching. Thank you for hanging out with me here as I stream it and on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Take a second, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you have not already. If you're watching on another platform, all of my best stuff is going on to YouTube these days. So when you're done watching this, or whenever you would like, take a second and go find me and follow me over there. But I think it's so powerful when we're in the attachment paradigm. We're living through a lens of, am I going to be punished? Am I going to be accepted? Am I going to get in trouble? And I like the fact that this message is such a different frequency than all of that, and goes beyond all of that and says, all that is God utterly delights in who you are. It's not about, are you enough? Or are you good enough? Or have you earned it? Or have you done enough? Or have you proved it? Or are you going to be punished? Or is somebody upset? It's not about any of these emotional dynamics that may be lingering with you from childhood. The message of God comes, I delight in you. What if you delighted in you? I remember Marianne Williamson always says, it's very powerful to pray, God, show me what you see that I don't see. And simultaneously, show me what I see that you don't see. Align my perspective, do you feel that, with eternal truth. So what if there are some things, that there are some ideas, there are some stories about the way you see yourself that are beneath the truth? You're too good for those stories to keep being carried forward with you because they are beneath the truth of who you are. And what if there's a new story, a good story, a better story for you to step into today, where God says, this is my child. I claim them as mine, my lovable, worthy, favorite child, and I find delight in them. What if you let yourself delight in the creation of God that you are? That is a powerful question for today. What if I let myself delight in the perfect creation of God that I am? So I want to invite you to participate with me, with all of us in this community, in leaning into this message and claiming it and doing the work today. And there are 3 opportunities that I'm going to share with you for how you can do that. Number 1, if you've been in my community for a while, you've probably heard me mention somewhere along the way my very first really big hit program, and that is the Worthiness Workshop. And I want to offer it specifically today as a standalone item. And we're going to take it all the way back to the OG early bird price of like 5 or 6 years ago. We don't do this often, but we're going to take it all the way back to the OG early bird and return to the price of $444. But if you're watching this today, if you're watching this live or on the replay, message me for a link. We will probably post it in the description or in the video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching elsewhere, please message me for this today specifically. But Worthiness Workshop is all about knowing, feeling, trusting that you are worthy of good things, worthy of love, worthy of your desires, worthy of the vision that you are working on bringing to life. And I promise you, you don't want to be working against yourself. You don't want to be trying to create something, but the energy and the identity and the beliefs within you are canceling it out every step of the way. This program is a powerful foundation of worthiness. It is a powerful foundation of spiritual law and principle, and it is a powerful foundation of feeling connected to God again. People have listened to it or watched it and said, I haven't felt this connected to God in 30 plus years. This has been such a gift. So, Worthiness Workshop, we're going to make available today. If you want to dive into some more teaching around the new story of your identity as a child of God, Worthiness Workshop will support you. Second of all, there are a couple of you, and I feel intuitively it's like 2 or 3, there's a couple of you watching this that really feel, I have some unresolved stuff here. In the attachment department, in the trust department, I have some unresolved stuff here that really needs to be addressed. Because I see now that for me to receive from the one source and supply of all that there is, I need to be able to trust. I don't want to keep living in anxious attachment with God. I don't want to keep living in avoidant attachment with God. And many of you are leaders and you realize this is bigger than me. I want to clean this up. I want to shift this. I want to resolve this once and for all for my relationship, for my family, for my kids, for my business partners, for my community, for my clients, for my team. I want to resolve this for myself, knowing the ripple effect of doing this work will not only help me receive everything that I want to receive without having a block in any way on that front, right? But also, if I do this work, it will ripple out and change the lives and the experiences of everybody connected to me, personally and professionally. I love doing this work with people. I particularly love doing this work with my one-on-one clients. I always think about a testimonial that I never forgot in my first year of business where somebody said, I came to Stefan looking for a business solution. And I got it, but what I also got was my heart and my truth and feeling more loved than I ever had before. And that lights me up. I'm not even gonna pretend it doesn't. That kind of stuff lights me up because what I know to be true, the way I see it is, business is often a gateway to personal development. And personal development is a gateway to spirituality. And when you get more connected to all that there is in the infinite realm than you have ever been before, yes, your business gets better. Yes, your personal growth gets better, right? But you are more happy, more loving, more peaceful, more satisfied, more fulfilled than you have ever been before. And that is everything. So we will post the link if someone wants to type it out on the live stream. I think many of you know it. It is applywithstefan.com. I will remind you there is no A in my name. It is STEPHEN, applywithstefan.com. But if you're feeling drawn to do some one-on-one work together, even if you don't know exactly what it's for, exactly what we're gonna do work around, exactly what it's gonna shift, trust me. When you clean this stuff up, when you heal here, when you shift here, it all gets better in ways you never imagined. So that is the second invitation, applywithstefan.com. And then last but not least, I just want to say thank you as we have been recording more and more content and sharing more and more teachings and resources and making them available to people all around the world. Thank you to every single one of you who is partnering with me and supporting this work. I do not take it for granted. I do not take you for granted. You have helped make this video and this message possible that I just tell you with absolute certainty is changing lives around the world. both as we are here live and in the days to come, as it is found, as it is discovered, as it is shared. So thank you to every single one of you, especially who in recent days, as we put an invitation out to connect in a different way, have decided to support. You know, I shared with you that every single day we do our regular giving practice. And it's something I've done for over a decade. I recently did an entire teaching getting into the way that I give and the principles behind it that really do stretch across all science and metaphysics and religion and spirituality, and the ways that it has changed my life for well over a decade. I will link that training here if you want to check it out. We also made it available as a full free video on YouTube to make it even easier for people to find. But let me know if you need help getting to that training. But as I shared, I do my daily giving practice every single day. And I very much give from the paradigm, the perspective, the framework of feed what's feeding you. Bless what's blessing you. Give to what's giving to you. And every day when I give, I set an intention. Because I just believe if I am a cause with an effect, if this is a seed with a harvest, if I have the opportunity to set something into motion, I want to be very deliberate. I want to be very intentional with what I am creating in my life. And so today, in a little while, when I do my own giving practice for the day, I can tell you right now, I'm going to put something there in terms of intention around this identity core stuff. Because I just know the more I live into, I am the lovable, worthy, favorite child of God, in whom you are delighted. Such a good energy to that. I want to be able to delight in my life as much as you are delighted. How beautiful is that? And so I just know the more I live into that story, the more I open up to, the more I can receive, the better my life will be. If this message specifically spoke to you and you want to claim something for yourself, feel free. I always invite people, if you give to me at the link that we can share below, paypal.me/StephenLovegrove, I always share, use that note section and share, not just for yourself, but please share with me. I would love to hear, what is it that you are setting into motion? I read every single one. I love seeing them pop up, and I love getting to pray over every single one of you, to be in agreement with your visions and to bless you into everything you give, coming back to you, multiplied, making room for more, and opening up even more. So thank you for every single one of you who has chosen to participate recently or even today in this moment. Thank you. I love you. You are in my heart always, and I truly do pray for you every day. But that's the message that I wanted to share with you today. I think it's time to grow up in our attachment. And I don't say that in like a toughen up kind of way, right? But I think it's time to step into a secure bond, a new story, an experience of trust with all that there is. And I pray that this has already shifted you from the inside out as you watch. I pray that this has already helped you begin to step into a new story, because you are the lovable, worthy, favorite child of God, in whom God is absolutely delighted. How would you show up? What would you do next? What would you create in the world? From that knowing, from that identity. I love you, I believe in you, and I always will. The best is yet to come.